We have Craig here too.
Oh, that's right. I keep forgetting he is on the executive committee. Sorry, Craig. I apologize.
Well,
Yeah, we instead of 4 members, we ought to have about 8 or 9. And it looks like Barry's going to be jumping in and out. Barry's computer gives him a lot of grief sometimes. Okay. We're going on YouTube, so we'll give a few minutes in case anybody wants to submit public comment. Like I said, we'll get things underway maybe in another 7 or 8 minutes. All right, YouTube stream is working great. I don't see anyone putting any comments in, but there is at least one person watching, other than me making sure it's okay. While we're waiting for other folks to join, or for anyone who wants to make a public comment, Joe, I'll just sort of introduce our committee a little bit. Unless you've already heard from other MBTA folks about us, we were formed in 2004 originally as part of a, I guess you could call it a settlement, for lack of a better term. Is that about right, Len and Craig? A settlement with the MBTA to do with a fare increase that was happening in 2004, and as part of the sort of the deal for the fare increase to move forward, a lot of advocacy groups wanted to have a committee of oversight made up of riders, just everyday people, and that's what we are. We were formed in order to perform oversight of everything at the MBTA, from fiscal, financial, capital projects to day-to-day operations, how advertising is managed, and how, even real estate, everything down to nuts and bolts of track upkeep. The nature of being an oversight organization means that we're always a little bit behind the leading edge of projects. The FMCB and the MassDOT board are, of course, setting the directions, but we are very active in following MBTA and participating in reviews of how projects are going, what was the desired outcome met, and also providing feedback where it's applicable as projects are evolving and going forward. And I'm really glad that you could join us, particularly this month after we've had such tremendous rain. And I think it was record-setting for the month of July, if I'm not mistaken. So I don't want to get too ahead of us. I mean, I'll give a few more minutes, but that's a little bit about us. Go ahead, Craig. Yes.
No, I was just gonna say, do we want to get? We're just out of respect to our guests and in his time. Do we want to just go ahead and get started?
Sure, I'm up for that. Len, any concerns?
No, I agree with Craig.
Okay, that sounds great. It's being recorded on YouTube, so people who are running late can watch the beginning and get caught up. So again, Joe, I'm Stefan, and you see Len and Craig, and we have Emily from CTPS, and Barry, who pops in and out as his computer has problems or not, is sort of an unofficial representative of the I always forget the acronym. One of the national transit advocacy groups. I can't think of the name of Barry's primary group. Anyway, that's us in a nutshell. Joe, again, welcome. Thank you for joining us.
Yeah, and I think I know Barry from the accessibility access board, I think.
Yeah, I think you're right. Yep.
I think I've spoken to him before. So yeah, thanks for having me, Stefan and team. So I've not presented to this this team before, or this board before, this committee before. But I did talk to Dave Carney, Steve Hicks, gave me a little advice that you guys are a great group and have a lot of questions. So I want to get right to that, and certainly want to open myself up for questions. I do have just our GIS system is something that I would be able to show you if you want to give me the screen at some point, and we can talk through that.
Yeah, I can do that right now if you'd like.
Oh, okay.
I'll stop the share of my own, and I will allow panelists to share. Go right ahead, please.
Yeah, and I don't want to distract you from just talking through a little bit. As you said in your email, it sounds, sorry, can you still hear me?
Oh yeah, yep, okay. Sounds good. And the screen looks good too.
Okay, great. So yeah, so just to give you a sense from your email, it sounded like, the title of the email was drainage, but then reading through some of the questions of the committee was more about susceptibility to climate change and maybe some of the sea level rise that we're starting to see, and what our plans are to fight that. So I think today what I was gonna just run through is a little bit about myself and my group and what we do for the agency, and then get a little bit into some of the teams that we have that are working on how we essentially try to keep ourselves as dry as possible in order to be able to run the service every day. So I'll start there. My name is Joe Cheever. I'm the Senior Director of Engineering and Maintenance. For those who might not know, that's on the transit side, so not commuter rail, just on the transit side and bus. We do all of the infrastructure maintenance. So under my group of the 850 employees, we're broken into 4 divisions or 4 departments. That's track, maintenance of way track, the power department, the signals and communication department, and then the facilities department. So each of those teams in each of those directorships try to run the good service every day, try to keep the infrastructure up and running from all those aspects, both from bus and rail and light rail. So in those teams, we have what we call our asset management system, Trapeze, where we have all the assets listed, especially our critical assets. And we're actually in a program now to develop all of our preventative maintenance and inspection programs against those critical assets and track that all digitally. So everything we've been out there, we've counted it all up. We know where it all is. We're getting it into the system, and now we're in a program to be able to run good preventative maintenance and inspection programs against it per schedules, and then be able to track those schedules and see how well we do. And I say that all because pump maintenance, pump room maintenance in the service defects that happen when water cannot be extracted from the tunnels or from our low areas is tracked in that system, so that we're able to see and trend some of the data against where those issues occur, and try to get ourselves in a position to be resilient enough to fight against that. So when I see water start to infiltrate, so when we have these storms and we start to see some of the rainfall, what we see first is a drop track circuit, or some sort of a buildup of water in the track section, usually reported by an operator on a train, or maybe it's one of our signal inspectors that are out there that might see that water build up. So I'm trying to get from reactive maintenance, which is where we're at now, to a preventative maintenance through these inspection programs. And eventually I want to get to working with the environmental department and our Hannah Lyons from our environmental department, trying to get to a predictive maintenance perspective. So what that will do is put the sensors out there and be able to track our pump rooms and where we see water starting to infiltrate before we see those service impacts. Right now, unfortunately, we're in a little bit more of a reactive maintenance perspective. So what we'll see is a drop track circuit from the signal side because of water buildup. And what happens is, as maybe you know, the signal system works on a negative return system. So it's required, it will shunt the track, water will shunt the track. So it will close that circuit and the water pretends like it's a train. Therefore, we'll have a drop track circuit and we'll lose traffic so that trains cannot pass through the area. And so once we see that drop track circuit, we're holding up trains, we're saying go into a manual bypass, and we're seeing officials out in the field. It's a little bit more dangerous of a situation than what we want in our primary system. So with that water buildup comes service impacts. So we will dispatch immediately. We'll have essentially 3 trades that are responsible for making, I should say 4 trades that are essentially responsible for making sure that that is immediately addressed. So first, we have the track department. Our track walkers are constantly out in the system, in the tunnels, and we walk track on the heavy rail 3 times a week. So they are constantly looking out for any buildup on any of the drains, maybe some leaf debris, anything that would cause the actual surface water not to make it to the drains themselves. From the drains to the pump rooms is the plumbers. So we have a few plumbers, not many, and we're constantly checking drains. We may have a company called Podersky or one of our other vendors come in and jet the drains to make sure that the drains to the pump room actually make it, so that water is actually making it to the pump rooms themselves. Once we're in the pump room, in the several pump rooms we have across the system, it's either a machinist who actually works on the pumps itself and make sure that that pump is operating correctly, the belts are correct, that we have all of the systems associated with the pumps working correctly. And then we also have the electricians. So the electricians are making sure that the controls are working correctly, that the pumps actually have power, and that they're operating correctly according to the pump schedule. So of those 4 trades, everything has to work correctly. And that's where it'll start with the signals department telling us that we have an issue and we're doing some reactive maintenance to try to get that water moving and get it clear. So we see that on a pretty routine basis when we have some fairly good sized storms. It will be different depending on, everyone says, oh, there's a storm coming. We track that very closely in terms of where the weather seems to be hitting. If it's on the South Shore, we're going to have issues down through JFK. Maybe we're going to have issues down at the lower end of the Red Line down to Braintree. There's a couple of low areas between Quincy Adams and Braintree. If it's up north, up into Cambridge, we have some very low areas between really in that Kendall, Harvard area. Water seems to collect down in there. It's very deep at that point. Really, the subcatchment, even though Cambridge seems high, our subcatchment is a lot larger considering how deep we are in those areas. Obviously, up in the Blue Line with the Under Harbor Tunnel and up through to Wonderland, we would definitely see some surface water collecting in a couple different areas, and we try to stay ahead of that. Out on the Green Line, western side, we have a couple culverts that we keep very close eye on. Right around Glen Ave, we've had a washout a few years ago. We keep very close eye on around Hammond Pond, and a couple areas through Kenmore to Hines, where we see a lot of infiltration through the tunnel. So we know where our areas are, and when a storm is coming through, we can kind of predict where we know we're going to have those issues. And so we make sure to go out ahead of time, check our pump rooms, check for any leaf debris around those drains, jet drains, do whatever we need to do to make sure the water keeps moving. And then we'll check pumps pretty routinely to make sure things are moving. I wanted to give you a quick sense of just the breadth of what we have. So there are quite a few pump stations in our system. If you can see here on this chart or on the GIS, we've had those all mapped at this point through our asset management system. We know where they all are. We know generally what size pumps we have at all these different locations. Several of the big ones like Gurney Street is a very large one around the southwest corridor of the Orange Line between Mass Ave and Gurney Street. So you see like Gurney Street Pump Station, Fallon Street Pump Station, which is right around Boylston, Porter and Davis. We have Garfield Pump Station, a couple pretty large pump stations that are pumping quite a bit of water. But then really we rely on all the whole system to work as one big team to really move that water from pump station to pump station and then on to the MWRA system. So quite a bit of water moving depending on where that storm might have come, and we're moving that water pretty quickly. Everything I've talked about so far is really surface water, and what we're talking about with stormwater treatment, really not specific to sea level rise, which was part of the email that you talked about. I think that is something that we definitely have looked very closely at most recently with working with Hannah and the environmental team. When we had the incident 2 years ago at Aquarium where we saw quite a bit of a storm surge on top of a high tide that really inundated Aquarium. And our under harbor pump room really kept up with that without too much of an issue. We did see a bit of water buildup there. We saw a little bit of water buildup in the Silverway, in the Silver Line at Silver Line Way, in the transit pump room, Fall River pump room. So we saw quite a bit of water buildup in those areas during that storm surge. But really, the trick there is just not to let the water into the tunnel in the first place, and that's where we did purchase a Tiger Dam after that incident, and then eventually, once the Tiger Dam is now a useful tool for us to be able to deploy, it's basically a sandbag system that can be deployed much quicker. Now we have a panel system at Aquarium where we can set out panels that are just more robust, and it's obviously more enduring. So we can set those panels out when we know that a storm surge such as that incident we had a few years ago comes. We can set those out ahead of time. Other areas where we see water inundation because of sea level rise, we obviously looking at our portals, certainly Silver Line Way, certainly the Under Harbor Tunnel or the Blue Line, but also up through the Blue Line on the other side of the airport, up along that stretch just beyond Orient Heights. A couple different areas that we track very closely when we see that storm surge coming, and we're looking at the high tide and trying to track that so we're prepared for it. So we look at it from both ends, depending on whether we're having a storm event with a lot of storm water or storm surge, or worst case scenario is both at the same time. I have participated with the Mystic River Valley planning group, which talks very specifically. We had a tabletop session where we went through and discussed a lot of the different possibilities of different storm surges and different events that could happen, especially with our different systems that we have in place that may fail at any interval during a storm, and what we would do at that point, whether it would be our power systems from South Boston, whether it be the actual tunnel system itself, any failures of that sort, how those residual failures would end up impacting some of the other agencies that we support and that support us. So something that we think about quite a bit, and that we feel that we're getting more and more prepared in the case that the sea level rise is not going anywhere and that it is going to impact us over the future several years. So something we definitely think about. So both from the storm impacts on the surface water, stormwater, and from the storm surge. Lastly, just wanted to talk a little bit about the tunnels themselves and the amount of water that we see as we call it infiltration. So that's like groundwater infiltration or storm surge, stormwater from some of the storm systems that we've seen even come in the last month or so. There is a bit of a water buildup that happens over time. So our groundwater does seem to be at a high point right now. We see a lot of water in places we haven't seen before this year. And that's just coming in through infiltration through our tunnel system. We cannot keep it dry. I think anybody that's worked in tunnels before knows that you're not going to keep it dry. What you need to look out for is any structural failures, which we've seen some impacts of that over the years, where some of our incipient spalls are definitely because of water infiltration, where we start to see degradation of rebar, degradation of joints, So we are inspecting those tunnels routinely and making sure that we're doing the proper repairs to inject and then repair those joints. So quite a bit of work, try to keep the water out of the tunnels in the first place. This pump system that I talk about and the amount of water that we're pumping out on a routine basis really is the last level of protection. Really, we're trying to do as much as we can to keep the water out of the tunnels in the first place. So that's kind of the last piece of it from an infrastructure perspective. Hopefully that gives you just a quick overview, and hopefully, like my colleagues have told me, you have some questions for me that I can get into a little deeper. Any areas that you want to highlight?
Oh yeah, thank you. That was excellent. Yeah, I'll start right off with just a question about the sort of the scale of the ingress and the pumping egress of the water. I mean, do you have like could you put it in terms and say, yeah, this pump room here could empty an Olympic-sized swimming pool in 10 minutes? I mean, do you have any kind of reference points for the layperson?
Oh, that would be excellent if I did. That sounds awesome. I don't have that off the top of my head. I know that pumping at 200-300 gallons per minute out of the Gurney Street pump room is definitely something that we see pretty routinely. We have 4 pumps there. They don't all work at the same time necessarily, so you won't see that at a peak, but they'll work together 2 on, 2 off at a particular moment. So I think that's more, I know it in gallons per minute. I could probably convert that to, Olympic-sized swimming pools or something like that.
No, but even knowing the gallons per minute, you said it's hundreds and hundreds of gallons per minute.
Oh, absolutely. Yep. Each pump, those larger pumps have the capacity to do that, and there are several of those. Yeah.
And I'm also curious about whether the pumps are designed specifically to handle salt water versus fresh. I mean, if there's ever a saltwater ingress into a pump room that's designed only for fresh, is that going to cause problems to the infrastructure?
It does. We don't design the pump room specifically for salt water. What we do is we design them all to have that resiliency. So pumps that are, say, up by Fenway trying to pump the Muddy River and that type of thing, where we may only see some brackish water, that still has the same pump housing that you would see in the Under Harbor Tunnel, for example. I think pumping salt water is, obviously you have the degradation from the salt water. That's something we definitely see. I've actually had more of a concern or more issues with the transitway pumping system because of the silt that we see from the slurry wall. So what happens is over time, as that slurry wall starts to degrade and it takes some of that, the water takes some of that and gets it to the pump room. We have to muck out these pump rooms pretty regularly because of the silt, and that's actually more of a concern to me than even the brackish water or the salt water.
I'll let other folks ask questions. Please just jump right in, folks.
Sure, I have one. Hello?
Yep, you're on live.
Great, cool.
Go right ahead. Yep.
So, are you also in charge of maintenance that's not just water?
I am. I'm on the transit side, so not commuter rail. I do all of the transit maintenance, infrastructure maintenance. Yep.
Great. One of the sort of big things that's been sort of noticeable since Transit Matters released its data dashboard is just sort of the on-time performance and the between-time station hits the blue line takes every time an inspection goes out in the middle of the day to look at wires in the daylight. This doesn't seem like an operation that a lot of other transit agencies do. Why do you guys prefer doing it then instead of later or after hours even?
Yeah, we actually do it both. So we do it during the day and then we make the repairs on the overnight. So the concept is we get a very short window of time at night between the end of service and starting up in the morning. So what we want to do is try to plan to execute the work to repair the defects on the overnight. So if we're trying to do the inspections on the overnight, now we know about that defect, we need to schedule that for the following night to go out there and repair it. What we want to do is identify those defects in service. So identify the defects right in the middle of the day when the heat and the, or whatever impacts of all the service vehicles are having on the overhead. We want to see those defects during the day, during service, so that we can plan our overnight work to be the most efficient when we need more time to actually repair the wire or repair the OCS system, depending on what might be the defects. So unfortunately, yes, we do run those wire cars during the day on green and blue in order to be able to identify those defects. Try to run them as quickly as possible. So we only do repairs, but we actually hold up service for any length of time if it's absolutely necessary. The concept is that those wire cars should be moving as best we can with service.
Okay, thank you.
Weig or Craig or Len or Emily, questions? If not,
I'll go ahead and
go ahead.
Yeah, I'll jump in again. Once again, not water related, but just curious how you manage the overall, prioritize the overall backlog of smaller items. Just knowing that there must be hundreds and hundreds of little things. For example, thinking of platforms where the concrete's chipped and should be patched and things like that. How do you go about prioritizing those? And how actively is that managed? And how do things get moved up or moved down in that list when we're talking about kind of the numerous smaller things that come across every day or flag to you every day?
Yeah, absolutely. Something we think about all the time because the backlog doesn't seem to be going away, even as we try to get more and more efficient. And I try to get more staff in so that we can address as much of the backlogs as possible to try to get ahead of it. But yes, it's something we think about quite a bit. We do have a priority system in our asset management system, in our work management system. So, and I say that as synonymous because it's both trapeze. We use it as our asset management system, but it's also our work management system. We identify defects against an asset, and then that's what creates our work orders and creates our plan for executing the repairs. So we have a priority system within that. It's basically pretty simple, priority 1 through 4. And priority 1s are essentially an emergency that need to be taken care of pretty immediately. Priority 2s, we say, okay, we need to probably shift our planned work to execute this. So that would be like within the next 2 weeks cycle of planned work. And then priority 3s are the ones that are out probably 3 or 4 months. And the priority 3s is where I think what you're referring to. It's the little things that just pile up over time. So the supervisors of each of the lines, the supervisors of each of the different sections are constantly looking at those priority 3s. So obviously the priority 1s, priority 2s, you just got to take care of that. Sorry, you got to fix your stuff very quickly. Now you're into your plan due review. You're looking a week ahead. You got 5 nights of work during non-revenue that you're going to be able to execute work. What are you going to be doing each of those nights? How can you best mobilize the people and the resources to be able to execute that? And you're trying to do it so that you're kind of maybe working from one end of the line to the other, or maybe if it's tactile and spot repairs, trip hazards, what have you, maybe you're working station by station. That way it's most efficient. You can mobilize your material and everybody knows where they're going every night to execute that work. So what they try to do is what they call a plan do review process, where they're looking at all their service requests or all their work orders for a certain area. And then they're trying to execute all that within a certain period of time, planned work for over maybe a week or 2 to try to execute that time. And then they're going to move up the system maybe to the next section of work. Now, what happens is eventually is that when you start on one end of the line to go to the other, for example, the things on the first end of the line really start to pile up. So unfortunately, what we end up having to do is bounce around a little bit. So I think to answer your question in terms of priority, it's very tough to prioritize those priority 3s. Obviously safety first, obviously service first, service second, trying to make sure that we take care of those priority 1s and 2s right away. Within those priority 3s, we try to be the most efficient we can. And sometimes that means that certain work has to wait so that we can make sure we attack it efficiently. We've also
that's a great answer, because I think many of us have a similar experience in our personal life or our professional lives, or I know some members of the committee are involved in software coding, and it's that same issue of, no matter what industry you're in, how do you prioritize those smaller things that aren't that aren't sexy, that aren't maybe in the high priorities for management or for politicians or something like that, because they don't go away. So it's interesting to hear about it.
I think the last that is to do over the last 2 years or so, since we've created the Office of the Chief Engineer with Eric Studhoff, and with the relationship that we've built with the capital programs team, is that we've tried to identify any trends that we see in the daily stuff. So if we have programs now, so we call them the on-call program. So structural on-call is now doing a lot of crack injection and leak injection. So now that gives our maintenance team the ability to say, hey, I see a trend here. I'm actually going to bucket all of these little things into a larger item that's going to be part of a program for the capital teams to help us address. So that's kind of that last line of defense after the maintenance team can bucket some of the items that capital can come in and help us with.
How much does something being shovel ready matter? Put another way, do some of those small things, it's like, yeah, you have the capabilities, you can just go out and knock them out, but some of the other ones, like, we're going to wait to do concrete repairs. I'm going to wait till I have extra concrete kicking around to do something. I'm not describing it well, but I'm just the idea of, I like that idea of bucketing. That makes the sense from a efficiency perspective, but also thinking about beyond bucketing things, how much does do things that are kind of ready to be worked, do those float to the queue, if you will?
Yep, absolutely, and it's seasonal too as well, right? So we try to do a program, brightening, cleaning up in the spring. Summertime, we're trying to do some more of the more robust access work that we can get during the good weather. You get into winter prep, and then once the winter hits, you're really, operationally and you're reactionary. So whether it's seasonal or by when the resources are available, we're doing just that, trying to attack it based on what we have available. Yep.
I'm interested about what's our capacity or our future growth. Not phrasing this well. Our future growth capacity for rainwater. I mean, it's pretty clear from everything that sea level is going to rise, but I don't know how much talk has been or how much study has been done about how much additional rainfall we may be getting because of because of climate change. Take this month for an example. So I'm really interested to know, are we running basically at, are all of our pumps reaching 100% capacity for a month like July, or particular tropical storm downpours 3 weeks ago? Or, are we already starting to plan for, we've got to supplement this pump room with another pump room somewhere else, or we've got to add more pumps into this room that's already there? Where are we in terms of being able to handle what's expected for additional rainfall?
Yeah, I think that's part of what we're talking about with Hannah and the environmental team in terms of what, really we need to figure out where our pumps are now, because we're not collecting all the data we could collect on how much we actually pump. So we know what our capacity to pump is, but we don't know necessarily, we know hours run, and we could probably figure it out based on some of the pump inspection reports that we have. But really what we need is real-time data to see how those pumps are performing as is. And I think what we found out as we did that research and we started to get into that is we understood that a lot of the pumps are in a state of disrepair, right? Like, we need to start upgrading our pump systems, even if we replaced in kind in several different areas. So that's what Gurney Street upgrade was. That's what Fallon Street upgrade was. They're starting to replace really just in kind, but by replacing in kind and having a more efficient pump there, we're going to be able to have a larger capacity just by being in a state of good repair. So I think it's really step one from a maturity perspective is just really to get our pump rooms in a state of good repair and get them all operating most efficiently. And then I think by doing that, they're all going to have PLCs, and collecting the data on how those pumps are performing and how much water they're taking in. That's where I cross over to environmental to give me that guidance to say, actually, these pump rooms are going to need more capacity in the future, like you talked about, Stefan. So I think that's exactly where we want to go. We're just not there yet in terms of knowing which pump rooms need to be upgraded, well beyond where they are today. I can say that, like you said, July has given us quite a challenge here. There's quite a bit of rainfall that we've seen this year specifically, and we've been able to perform, I'm going to knock on some wood here, pretty well. I can tell you that Kendall was definitely a concern, but that was actually a surface water issue. We were not able to, we had a bit of a dam going on down there where the ballast was all fouled and would not allow the surface water to get to the pump room. So not a pump problem necessarily, more of a surface water issue. JFK was an issue, but that's really the lead track to Cabot, not necessarily a mainline track, where we were inundated for almost an 8-hour period. We were not able to run trains through there as we were just waiting for the water to go down, quite frankly. There's not a pump capacity perspective. It was a gravity drain that just needed to take some time to dissipate. As far as our pumps go, we seem to be holding our own. I think where we're going to see more of those impacts as, maybe some of these stronger, longer duration storms, months where we see such a large inundation of stormwater, it's going to take a long time for the rivers and the stream beds to go down to a point where we're seeing our gravity drains work as well as they're supposed to. So that would probably be an area that we need to continue to focus on to make sure that we're getting that positive drainage.
Okay, excellent. I'll let somebody else ask something, then I've got yet another one.
Well, this is Wig. I'm sorry I was late. I had a little bit of a late start, but I had a hard time checking in for some reason. So I might have missed this, but when you look out, let's say 50 years, do you have a strategic plan for every 2 to 4 feet of sea level rise? When critical path projects have to be started?
So the quick answer is no, I can't point to a strategic plan. What we have is the study that was just done. It was actually in the Globe yesterday, the study that we did, where we're starting to identify the areas where we're going to see the inundation and that we need to pay the most attention to. So once we've kind of got to that level where we know where the impacts are going to be from a service perspective and what we're going to be able to anticipate and be able to, what level of resiliency we have. So in other words, it's not about trying to stop the Category 5 hurricane. We're just not going to be able to run service at some point. So it's about talking about how we're going to be able to suspend service during a Category 5 hurricane, and then how quickly can we recover from that and get ourselves back to service. I think that's more where our focus is with that report that you might have read about in the Globe yesterday. And that's really where it's more strategic in that regard, not necessarily infrastructure strategic plan. That kind of comes with our capital investment plan, right? So I think the CIP shows where the chief engineer's office and the environmental group are getting together and saying, these are the strategic goals we have in terms of building up, the aquarium protections that we have, the seawall along Charlestown bus garage, some of the work that we're doing at the Maverick pump room with the ventilation fans. So those are the areas where I think you just see good capital investment that's going to be our best bang for our buck going forward and get us a little bit more resilient. We have implemented some policies around climate change. So like any new infrastructure should be built above the 100-year flood elevation. Those types of ongoing improvements to our design standards are also getting us in a better position to be able to fight the climate change. So sorry for the long-winded answer. I think
no, that's okay. I tried to download that about 5 minutes ago. I should be able to download the paper and then track it back through there. And is this kind of thing efforts like that paper and longer term assessment, is there a national framework for that? Or are you guys on your own? Someone at USDOT kind of, checking in with the different regions or metropolitan areas and, saying, hey, by the way, you should have this, this plan for what happens 20 years from now, completed by 5 years from now, or is there any kind of framework like that?
Yeah, well, so the answer is yes. It comes at us at a couple different areas, whether it's the security and emergency management side, which is, do you have a storm plan? Do you have a hurricane preparedness plan? That comes at us from the FTA's security and emergency management side. I think from an infrastructure side and the investment side, that's more coming from environmental EPA or from the federal DEP. So I think that's where you're going to see some of the regulations behind, resiliency or better infrastructure in place. So I think probably the best person to answer that question and what guides us there would probably be Hannah Lyons from our environmental team, who actually has to answer to those regulatory groups pretty routinely in terms of what plans she's got in place to fight climate change, or just in terms of being resilient against storm surge or any of the other weather-related impacts that we might see. So unfortunately, I'm just not on that side of the house onto it. But yeah, I think that's probably the best person to reach out to would be the environmental group.
Yeah, I'm not expecting you to have the answers. I'm just wondering about the framework. So I appreciate your answer. I actually would expect NOAA to have something to do with that as well. I remember hearing Jane, I've forgotten her name. She was secretary federal, and one of her charges was NOAA when the Gulf oil blew up. And she had a pretty interesting long-term framework. And I think if those guys don't do their job, then people in your position are just going to have a harder and harder job. So I think they need to try to get a little bit ahead of things so that the degree of crisis that people in your position face is a little bit more manageable. But thank you for your answer.
Anyone else want to jump in before I ask another thing about the water? Len, you've been awfully quiet, and Jacob, you only asked one question so far, but that's okay. That's okay. All right, Joe, I'm interested because you mentioned the MWRA earlier, and that it just occurred to me that, oh yeah, runoff from track is going to be contaminated with all kinds of stuff. You don't want to just throw that directly into Boston Harbor or Charles, of course. So how exactly is all of that water processed? I mean, it's probably not as noxious as sewage from residents and commercial brown water, but I'm sure you can't just treat it as like household gray water either. How bad is it, and what does it take to take care of it?
Yeah, we permit our outflow. So each of the pump stations has an outflow to an MW. Well, I can't say each pump station, because some of our pump stations pump to another pump station, and then but the pump stations that have an outflow to the MWRA are each permitted through the environmental team. So that relationship with MWRA, they take on the actual treatment of that water at that point. But they're asking us a lot of questions about what it is and where it's coming from, and we have some restrictions on some of the cleaning chemicals that we use or anything of that sort. We don't, I mean, it's not too noxious, what we have in the tunnels. I mean, even the grease buckets and some of the things that we use to keep service running, a lot of brake dust, which is some of the heavy metals that end up in the water, and some of the just general silt is something that MWRA gets concerned about. And through our permit process, we disclose all that to them, and they give us some guidance on what we can discharge to. So, and any time that we have a separate discharge, so if we have to pump out, like when we had the issues up at Orient Heights with the Casket Fire Company fire, or if we have an inundated area, like I was talking about at JFK, or maybe down at Gurney Street. If we have inundated areas where you have to pump to a different area, we permit those through MWRA, give them a heads up. They tell us where they want us to pump to, and then they take that into account when they're through their water treatment program. So it's just a close relationship we got to keep and keep our permits up.
Is it safe to say that, like, in terms of the materials that go into repairs and infrastructure, I mean, I might be going out on a limb here, but it strikes me as it's probably similar to, I could buy more environmentally responsible packaged materials at the store, but it might cost more, to buy more environmentally conscious materials. I mean, is there a point where that you evaluate for, if, or not you personally, but, are the teams evaluating, well, we could buy ballast from this company that's cheaper, but it's got more stuff in the ballast that we don't want to end up in the water. So we're going to pay a little more for the ballast to get cleaner ballast. I mean, is there anything like that goes on?
Yep, not specific to ballast. The ballast is clean wherever we buy it from. But I think the things like we just went through this with our ties, right? So ties have creosote in them, and we want to make sure that they're in good shape. So we actually have regulations or in our specifications as far as how much of the chemicals can be in something like that, especially in areas like the ties that we're using over the viaduct right now, over by Science Park. Like those regulations are all per either the MWRA. I think that's the Corps of the Corps engineers that tells us what we can have there over the viaduct. So we're given a lot of guidance in that regard. So a lot of the specifications that we use for materials purchases or any of that sort is all coming through the procurement department, which is driven by policies written by the environmental team. So yes, we are restricted in some ways in terms of what we can buy that may have certain chemicals and restrictions on it. I don't think I'm ever put in a position to say, am I willing to spend an extra $1 out of the operating budget to buy that 1 degree more environmentally friendly purchase, other than the fact that I feel like I'm a pretty good steward of the environment and good steward of the system. I think it's more about what policies and procedures we have in place for the procurement system.
Very good. I'm glad to hear that. Go ahead, Jacob. Your hands up. Okay, Craig. Go ahead. Then Jacob.
Sorry. I didn't. I'm on the. Apologize. I'm on the phone. I didn't see the hand up. Just one more question for me, and switching gears completely. Just kind of tying it back to our oversight role and how we can help. You mentioned at the beginning that the 4 areas that you cover off on. Yeah, I know resources are short in all areas and everything's tough. But is there one area in particular? If we were going to help advocate for you or push for you, is there any one area in particular where you feel like you're under resourced and need help? Where do you wish you had more engineers, or wish you had more people to do the repairs, or just wish you had more funding for materials? Where's your biggest need right now?
A great question. I appreciate the question. That's very good of you all to be advocates for us trying to maintain the system. I think what I keep telling my boss, and he's telling his boss, either Eric Studoff or Jeff Conneville, up to Steve Poftek, is really we need to fully engage and be committed to this preventative maintenance and inspection program. So with all the capital work that we're expending, we're up to $2 billion a year, which is excellent. I'm finally seeing some of that start to come to fruition, where we're seeing less defects because we have newer infrastructure. If we don't commit now to that preventative maintenance and inspection program, when we're out there inspecting on a routine basis against the schedule, we're tracking that schedule to make sure we're hitting it, and then doing the preventative maintenance, doing the defect management, and executing the work every night to stay ahead of it, then we're going to be right back to where we were, a couple of years ago before we started this large investment. So what I would say is full commitment to that program. Yep.
You're saying it's not all about fancy ribbon cuttings in politicians showing up for those. That if we're going to invest in those and we want to pass those on to the next generation, we need to invest in proper maintenance and upkeep going forward. And that's an easy thing to get cut because it's not sexy, it's not cool, it's just a necessity. So I 100% is supportive of that, and I appreciate you being. I mean, obviously you're advocating for yourself and your department, but I supportive of your mission.
Yeah, and we've seen. I mean, I've seen that in the most recent budget, fiscal year 22 budget for E&M, engineering and maintenance has increased year over year. So we're seeing that investment. I think. From a budget perspective, it's there. It's the actual execution. So we really need the staff hired. So I have the headcount in the budget. We just need that staff hired. We need them trained. We need them well resourced, and then we need to maintain that staff so that we're not losing them to other agencies. We're not losing them to, they're not quitting on us and what have you. We need to maintain that headcount over the years to come.
Go ahead, Jacob. Don't forget to unmute, Jacob.
Yes. Hi. Thanks. I was wondering. There's been a lot of progress recently with the repair work along the viaduct, as you were talking about with the new ties you were laying. For a while, there were some. Like the sort of construction progress blogs were sort of halted the construction progress at 78%. And sort of, can you talk to us a little about the work you've been doing on the Leechmere Viaduct and maybe some of the challenges that project has faced over the past little while?
Yep. So I can speak to it from an operation and maintenance perspective. I can't wait till they're done. It's been a long time coming. We needed this investment because the catenary system was starting to fail on us, and the structural components definitely needed the upgrade. So the challenges, and this is the capital delivery team, GLT, Angel Pena and his team doing this viaduct construction for us. We're really there in a support role until they're ready for us to hand it over to us. But what I understand is some of the challenges is just the historical structure that they're trying to repair and trying to work over the water. Definitely gave them some severe challenges in being able to execute that work. And then I think when you see the percentages go up, I was noticing the same thing. You kind of, the easy work, always you get a large percentage quickly. And then it's the little things when it comes to trying to pull all those systems together that are the toughest percentage points to grab as you're trying to close it out. So what I mean by that is really the overhead catenary system is all being completely torn out and redone. So right now we have new poles and a new OCS that's been put up. Putting all that in place may not be a lot of dollars spent, but it's a lot of tedious work to make sure that it's all adjusted right, that it's all well connected. You're doing your testing and testing and testing to make sure that all the cables are measured, everything has been installed correctly as you're making those final connections and testing the system. So I think what you're seeing, the same frustration I have, is let's get this thing done, let's get it back in service. I think you're seeing them, just meticulously going through all the testing that's required to get those systems in place. So new signal system up there, new OCS, new electrical system, and the actual catenary system is all brand new, not to mention the actual track infrastructure and structural upgrades. What we're planning to do now, I don't know if I'm letting any cats out of the bag here, but we're actually going to open that up with the Union branch. So the idea is that we should be able to, we don't need the viaduct right now, right? It's not going to go anywhere because Leechmere is under construction. So the point is to open that up as we're doing testing on GLX to get out to Union. And then you'll be able to run, open up the service all the way out to Union once that's up and running, which seems to be on track.
Len, and then Wig.
Thanks, Stefan. So you were mentioning that one of the challenges is keeping staff, or maybe you didn't say that it was a challenge, but that you want to be in a position where you can keep your staff and once you train them. What are the challenges in doing that?
Yeah, so it's several fold. So we have, let's see, right now I have authorization to hire up to 1,010 employees, and I'm at 887. So I'm about 100, I call it about 150 short of where I want to be in terms of a full staff. And I think I was able to get up to about just over 900 just before COVID hit, when we did the hiring freeze. So COVID-19 and the hiring freeze that we did because we were so unsure about the budget, I took a pretty good hit there where we were, if we're not replenishing employees, if we're not bringing in fresh employees, we have folks that are retiring, folks that are maybe maybe they had some sort of a medical discharge, what have it. We're losing employees. That's just that's just the way the numbers work, right? Where we have an older workforce that are working their way out. So if we're not constantly working to hire and replenish that, we're going to lose employees. So that's why I'm down to this 887 that I'm at now, and we're trying to hire that back. But the hiring process itself is just long and cumbersome, right? Just making sure that we do all the background checks, we do good interviews, which is important for us to do. I'm not saying anything bad about the HR department. They do a great job, but it just takes a while for that hiring process to go through, which means we're losing people as we're trying to gain people. And then once they're here and we got them working, it's depending on which trade we're talking about, but track work is very hard. And shovel and ballast is not easy work. It's hot out there. People get a little sick of it, whether it's through injury, minor injuries kind of over time start to get to a point where they're just not willing to stick it out and try to become a trackman and work their way up. So it could be drug and alcohol issues, could be absentee issues and not showing up to work. We won't hold them here. So we really struggle in those first couple of years trying to hold employees to really stay here and think that the MBTA is the great place to work that it is, and that they should stick around for the long haul. Once they're here and after a few years, now I feel like I can hang on to them at that point. It's just a matter of trying to stay ahead of the curve in terms of how many I'm losing on the other end to retirement or discharge because of an older workforce.
Yep, thanks. I mean, I just want to ask a few more questions along these lines. So do you feel that you lose more new employees than perhaps bus operations does?
Great question. I don't know bus operations that well, but I would imagine they probably lose more than us and trying to retain them through the training program.
Right.
Interestingly enough, the track department, we have a requirement with 589 that 51% of the folks that we hire in the track department need to come or be offered to bus operators. So we actually pull some of the folks from bus operations.
That's interesting. That's interesting. Because I know one of the issues that at least used to be the case with bus operations is that the new bus operators get the worst hours. And so they have to do these split shifts in the morning and in the afternoons. And I'm like, wow, is there any surprise that you lose people? And so I don't know I doubt you have a similar situation. But I was wondering, maybe since the work is so hard, maybe we could explore some different kinds of work regimens, like maybe, like 4-day weeks, maybe so that people have 3 days off, maybe so that they can recover. Not that I'm going to push any of that, but just saying maybe we can think creatively to help people or make the job more appealing to them. So I just put that out there as a thought. That's all. Thank you very much for your time and listening. Thanks for joining us.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Wig, you had your hand up on camera, and then Jacob after that.
Yeah, I want to piggyback on the answer to Jacob's question about the viaduct and the discussion of Union Square branch. It may be outside your area, but I've got some emergency vehicles outside. But anyway, the Green Line legal description, which is a federal obligation, includes not precluding getting the Green Line from Union to Porter. And I'm from Somerville, so this would be, I think, mostly a benefit to Cambridge and, people having more choice at Porter. But, and I've heard people just kind of laugh at that kind of implies that there's not really any effort to comply with that legal obligation. But I actually think it would be a pretty important link, and the folks in Somerville are pretty good about, giving up some things in order, I guess, to support a greater good. And if you could get that Union Square branch to Porter, that really starts to open up people's ability to go from Porter in either direction. They could come in on commuter rail or come in from Arlington.
I got to pause you because Joe's in charge of engineering and maintenance, not necessarily involved with like large long-term capital and system redesign projects. I mean, I'm sorry to cut you off, Wig, but I just want to refocus on what Joe's areas
but I
of
think
expertise are.
The objection is what's in the way because of the current situation. It doesn't seem like that big a deal to me to move a power substation or something like that in order to achieve that link. So do you know of any, and in your department, do you know of any obstacles that would preclude that legal obligation from being met?
If you're not sure, Joe, then that's completely fine to say.
Yeah,
I mean, it's outside your area of expertise.
That's exactly, that's exactly right. I haven't studied that right away. From the transit side, we don't have any infrastructure through there. There is the substation there that I'm well aware of that we tap off of for our new substation. But I couldn't tell you right now what it would take to extend that to Porter. I'd have to really get my head into it. So yeah,
well, that's
definitely
okay.
Don't have a lot to. Yep.
Can you suggest who might be better to answer that question?
Yeah, not to put him on the hot seat, but that's what I refer to our chief engineer, Eric Stuthoff.
Okay, thanks.
And his team. Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a big help. Yeah, thanks, Joe. Jacob, you're up.
Hi. Yes. If you, I kind of have to scoot after this question. If you had, let me lower my hand here. This is, I guess, sort of similar to an earlier question we were asked. If you could pick one piece of new hardware and one piece of new software or sort of operational change, like system-y kinds of change, like one new piece of concrete and one new piece of operational that would make your job easier, more efficient, what would those two things be?
I love that question, Jacob. That's awesome. So let me start on the soft side. What I'm advocating for now that I believe we need is so we have the asset management system and Trapeze, that's going to track all of our existing assets. But what it really doesn't do is give us that, we're going to need that predictive maintenance side. So what we need to have is what I would call a building management system for the infrastructure. So I'm sure you've seen, we have building management systems for individual buildings, but what we really need on the soft side, on a software side, is a building management system telling us how our system is performing on a more predictive measures across the system, all the systems. So we need a building management system. So that's the next thing I'm advocating for after the asset management system. So that's the one. And that could be just an add-on to our existing asset management system, or it could be a separate software all in and of itself, which I'm happy to discuss in detail as to which way to go. From a hard infrastructure perspective, I think from a service reliability perspective, I'm a meat and potatoes guy. I think the toughest areas to get to is those downtown pits. So whether it be the red and orange line, main infrastructure, probably red line, if I had to choose, would be I need full depth reconstruction with new power and signal cables in the heart of the subway system. It's hard access to get to. We got some of it last year with full depth track, but we did not replace a lot of the cabling or the power distribution system or the or the signal system at the same time. And I think that's what we really need to pull the Band-Aid off on. So if I had my choice of a hard infrastructure replacement, take Tufts Curve through Chinatown to downtown crossing on the Orange Line, and throw in the Southwest Corridor if you could, or Cambridge on the Cambridge side, Kent Kendall down through, I think MGH is going to happen down through Park and downtown crossing on the red.
Very
Okay,
good.
thank you.
Just a quick time check. It's 10 after 6, and I think we started talking with Joe about 10 after 5, so we've had him on for a full hour. I think we should maybe think about a few wrap-up questions, if there are any, and then we'll let Joe go on to the rest of his day. What else would people like to ask, a sort of a tail end of this session with Joe? Go ahead, Len.
Well, I'm just going to follow up on Jacob's question, if you want. If you said you could say a bit about whether we should do an add-on to the current asset management system or an alternative. You don't have to say a whole lot, but if you want to say a little more, I'm curious.
Yeah, so thank you. So I think we're learning a lot of from Trapeze and what that software capability is in terms of tracking our assets and defects against assets and our state of good repair. But I think that a standalone building management system may be the preferred option. I think there are softwares that are out there separate from asset management that would probably do the trick. I think to try to squeeze in what I'm envisioning for a building management system within an existing software where they're really focused, whether it be, on collecting assets and visually doing our work management, I think it needs to be a standalone building management system. And I look at it more from an operational perspective than from a state of good repair and capital reporting perspective. So I think we would be best served with a standalone building management system. And quite frankly, I think it should be tied to a robust GIS system.
Oh, cool. Well, I mean, Emily DeMonico from CTPS, she usually creates transit apps, but she's incredible. I think we could get her to design whatever you wanted.
Sounds good to me.
Just that much confidence in her skills. Thank you.
Well, Joe, thank you very, very much for joining us. A real pleasure. I can't thank you enough. So timely, topical with all the inundation we've had. So just a quick parting word. Please keep in touch and let us know if we can help you. I mean, we really mean that. We're not just here to just talk about stuff and ask questions. We really do want to put our boots on the ground and do research or work or even, outreach to riders. If we can bridge a gap between if you've got an impediment to moving forward in some area and you think that we can help, please leverage us. We're in this because we want to help out in whatever way we can.
Thank you. And I would say the same back at you. I know I just gave you an hour and I didn't have much of a presentation, but if you have specific areas you want me to come back and give you some more information on more specifically, happy to do that and keep the conversation going. So thanks for having me.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I will definitely. Oh, yeah, Len, go ahead. Hand up. Oh, that was a mistaken hand up. Okay, no problem. All right, Joe, I mean, it's almost 6:15, so you can sign off if you want, or feel free to stay on and listen, whatever works for you. No problem either way. Thank you again.
I'm gonna close it out. Thank you.
Okay, see you later. All right. Oh, and Jacob, I didn't notice while I was talking, Jacob signed off. No problem there. We could do subcommittee reports now and keep it a little brief since it's the three of us on the committee plus Emily plus Barry. Any thoughts, Wig or Len, on what you want to do? Or actually, you know what? Maybe it's now a good opportunity before we get into subcommittee reports and the other things. Emily, is there anything? Not necessarily right now. I mean, I think we'll probably move on to the other agenda items. But do you want us to make sure we reserve a little time for you to talk about anything or share anything? Again, you don't have to. If it's just anything you want to share, we'll give you whatever time you want.
Nothing right now, but I might reach out to you soon to reserve more of like a 15-minute block for something that we're wrapping up this month. But
yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Just so you know, we're probably, I mean, I think it's probably a 95% chance that we're going to have no meetings in August because it's generally a vacation month, and people like a little time away. So that's not a problem, I hope.
Oh no, this will
Okay.
still be very interesting and relevant.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So yeah, I mean, I'll keep that in mind. Maybe for do you have any preference? Would it be for the subcommittee? Which
I'll know more when we check in with the MBTA tomorrow.
Okay.
There's a couple different actors involved.
All right.
Well, but I think this is definitely a great audience that would be very interested in what we're doing.
Okay, excellent. Well, we'll keep you in mind for maybe this meeting in 2 months.
That sounds fair.
Okay. Len or Wig, do you want to present any report from Capitol while I go look my notes up for the other subcommittee?
Sure. Well, I'll keep it brief. I mean, it's just really for the record, since there's so few people here at this point. And so we talked about the UPWP, the Unified Planning Work Program, by CTPS, me for the MPO, and initially there was some thought about writing a letter. Since then, as part of RTAC, the Regional Transportation Advisory Council, I had a meeting for us to report on or give our input on the UPWP, and I'm thinking that will be sufficient since I'm on that group as a member of the ROC, and also it became a little challenging for me to write a letter that would kind of fit in with that RTAC letter. And so what I will say to anyone who has some thoughts, who's looked at the UPWP, if you want to submit your own letter, by all means do so. If you want to talk to me about questions you might have regarding it, I'll be happy to answer those questions. I guess another reason I hesitated to write the letter was that I didn't really want to put the group simply in a position of rubber stamping. So I felt that probably the better, well, I'll just stop. But so the point is that we're not going to submit a letter, but I will speak at the meeting where we do the final improvement of the document, and thank the MPO for spending the money to provide for staff such as Emily, and Jonathan Belcher, and Blake Acton and Brad Lee Putlam. I can't believe I pulled out all 4 names.
Wow, very good.
Enjoy this, yeah. And all of our past team, folks like Stephen Andrews, who's moving up in the CDPS world. He's like, what is his role, Emily? Now his new role?
He's the data strategist.
Yeah.
At the agency. So he's not just doing transit now, he's doing data for all groups.
Yeah. So now he's going to probably create all kinds of acronyms for things. I mean, Ferret's still around, and so he has a little knack for creating acronyms and real acronyms, not simply clusters of letters. That was that, and we also talked about the Commonwealth magazine article referring to allowing more people to use commuter rail based on their income, meaning that since there's lower usage of the MBTA, of the commuter rail, then it would be a good place to do means testing, because one of the criticisms or one of the issues of concern about means testing is that if you drop the fares and you get increased usage, let's say on the bus and subway, then you have to pay more operating costs, which would be a challenge for the T now. And of course, if we want to do it later, we'll have to find the funding for it, but that isn't the case with the commuter rail. And so I support that. Jacob feels that it would be more efficient and better if we just reduce fares across the board. So Jacob and I are going to do kind of like this counterpoint letter that we will hopefully post on the website if the group approves it. Otherwise, we might just go at it in Twitter. And initially, we were going to go for presenting something this meeting, but I asked Jacob if he was okay with holding off and doing something in September, partly because there'd be more eyeballs, but also I just ran out of time. And so and I didn't want to just rush something for the sake of rushing it. And in thinking about it, there was no compelling reason to do it for this month. I mean, and so maybe I rationalized August as being a low attention month, but that's what I did. So we're going to aim for September. And so that's pretty much it. Yeah. So I'll stop.
Superb. That was excellent.
Sure.
Thank you very much, Lynn.
Sure.
I'm going to slide in here my notes from marketing, communications, operations. I think they pretty much speak for themselves. We had a great turnout. We had more people at the subcommittee than at this meeting, which is always a little surprising. Talked with Rob Guptill. Oh yeah, I should make a full attribution. Oh, is it one L or twos? Two L's. I think it's.
I can never remember. I can never remember.
Yeah, I won't do that. Sorry, Rob, if you ever see this, I'll fix it. It's one. Thank you.
I think so.
Okay.
Apologies to Rob.
I won't take the time to open up my address book right now, but I'll fix it for later. But yeah, I think this speaks for itself. We talked about surveys returning to normal. I thought I called this out as a particular interesting point that basically everything is rising back up. There's not any particular one. There's no one line which is returning to pre-pandemic ridership faster than another.
It's 2 L's.
Thank you very much.
I bet.
I appreciate that. Oh, even my spelling checker knew it. I should have trusted my spelling checker.
I just got.
Look at that.
Pull up the two fields in several emails because I don't trust my spell checker, because if I put it in my spell checker, if I put it in wrong, then my spell checker will see it as something
of
legit.
Course, yeah. Well, apparently I did put it in my spell checker correctly.
Huh.
All right. I guess that's it, other than to say that for some time in the fall, we will reach out to Carolyn Van Ness, as I wrote.
Well, thanks to Rob too. That was the idea. That was the genesis of bringing in Mr. Cheever.
Absolutely. Yep.
Now, Rob's always good.
Oh, fantastic. Yeah. I mean, well, who would we interacted with on the Rock over the years who hasn't been excellent? Very few and far between. I can't even think of anybody right now. But anyway, moving on. We're now officially ahead of schedule, going by the agenda. I've been keeping an eye on YouTube to see if anybody else was watching or if there's any other comments coming in. And nope, not at the moment. Shall we go ahead to election of co-chairs? I'm not sure if we can.
No, we
because
can't.
It's the three of us.
Yeah, we can't. We can't.
Okay,
That's
well,
fine.
I volunteer to continue as one of the co-chairs for another, I guess it would be 2 months until September. Wig, does that sound okay to you?
Yeah, it's fine with me. And I'm happy to step aside in favor of anybody else on the committee as well. But yeah.
Well, we can bring it up for discussion at the subcommittees in September, and then we'll come back to nominations, elections in September in 2 months from today. 2 months from this now.
Right. Sorry.
That's okay. Anything to add on that, or we'll move into external meetings, old business, new business, and maybe we'll wrap up a little early, unless
we can wrap up early. And so MPO meetings, while we continue to discuss the issue with cost increases for projects, and so we'll be having a ad hoc meeting on that on Thursday. And interestingly, Matt Genova is helping out from CTPS, and he presented us with notes or a memorandum from the September 16th, no, September 15th, 2016 meeting where they were dealing with this issue. And that time it was revolving around the Green Line extension. And it was really, really interesting to read the minutes associated with that meeting from which that memorandum had come. And a lot of discussions very similar to what we're having now. In fact, in that memorandum, they asked some questions, for the board at the time to answer. And a lot of questions were very similar to what we're dealing with now. So I was like, what did they say in that meeting? And so I went and got the minutes, which are available online very easily. And so it was an interesting discussion. I intend to see if there was any subsequent discussion. Someone had mentioned like creating an ad hoc type committee, but that went nowhere at that meeting. I don't think they did create one. So I just put that out there as something, a curiosity kind of, I guess also to say, and I don't know if I need to warn us about anything, but unresolved issues, we don't tend to resolve themselves. So we'll see what we're able to do this time. I mean, one of the things we're struggling with is whether or not to fund the design part of the projects, because right now the thinking is that the projects go onto the tip at the 25% design stage, and you do tend to get a lot of cost increases after that, because as they design the project more fully, things come into better focus. And if and we are hard pressed to tell a municipality to go ahead and do more design, because that costs them, and then not do the project. And so the easy thinking is that we would take that on. But the concern now that was raised by Ken Miller, who works with the Federal Highway Department, I think Highway Association or whatever, and he used to actually be on CTPS. I don't know if he was, no, I don't think he was a chair, but anyways, he says the issue with that though is that if we spend the money and we don't do the project, then we have to give the money back. And so now we have to come to terms with that. I mean, initially when he said that, it made me it made me stop advocating that position. But now that I think about it, it's like, well, okay, well, if we have to give it back, we just have to give it back, and perhaps that would be less, than having to deal with major cost increases. Because the problem when projects go up in cost a whole lot is that it affects other projects, and how they move up into the point where they get started, and and that just has implications for the towns. And usually anything that's stalled ends up going up in prices, but everyone, once you start sequencing the project, everyone begins counting on it. And there's so much that goes into preparation for that, that you don't take stalling a project lightly. So we're just wrestling with that, and thanks for listening, because in the process of talking, I was kind of thinking through some things, that may be worth bringing up when we meet on Thursday. And those meetings are open to the public, so they're posted on NPO's website. Go to their calendar page, you can see it, and all the meetings are recorded and posted on YouTube. And then the only other channels that can hold a candle to the MBO's channel are the Rock's channel and MAPC's channel. So if you're up babysitting some night, yeah, you know where to go. So that's it.
Very cool. That was excellent.
Thanks.
Thank you. Wig, Emily, or Barry, unless you have something else you want to add in terms of external meetings or old new business, I'm going to throw up some, bring in a couple of new tidbits that I want to make sure that we see on the record. The first one being what was just recently announced, which should show up in my web browser. There we go. This was literally yesterday. Free Route 28 bus service, 12,880 riders every weekday pre-pandemic. So this is a phenomenal pilot, in my personal opinion. $500,000 investment from the city of Boston. I almost fell over with joy. I guess falling over. I mean, I was jumping for joy when I heard this on the news on WBZ Radio News yesterday. I guess that's pretty much, that covers it. Just wow.
Yeah,
Just,
well,
just
yeah.
wow.
I saw it in the news today. I mean, and so I mean, look, I mean, I'm not opposed to it at all. It's just, I mean, if someone wants to put up the money for it, then by all means. I mean, I'd love to have more transit all over the place. I mean, but we as a society have got to put the money up for it, because it's not like the people who are running the system, I mean, get to eat for free, I mean, and not pay any rent. I mean, so unless we're going to bring down the cost overall in society so that we can provide services, I mean, less expensively, then we need to find a way to pay for it. So if Boston was to put up the money for it, that's fine. I mean, I hope they're putting up enough money for it, and so that there's only cost take care of the fares, but it also takes care of other costs that are associated with it. And I hope it brings in more people, and that puts in more pressure, I mean, for the state to put in more money into transit and transportation.
Absolutely. Sorry, I'm just making sure I capture a note to make sure I put it on YouTube later. And then the other piece that I want to share very quickly, I put this onto the committee mailing list, but I also want to call it out here that it was announced, waiting for my, there we go. I didn't notice it at the time when it came out, but a full month ago, this was announced. And the big thing, at least for me personally, is that Lynn is in fact moving forward. I don't remember if it's in this. Yes, it is. Tom McGee, mayor of Lynn, has said close partnership with MBTA to move this project forward, support of local partners at GE. So Lynn is all in on this, particularly the Western Avenue area. I personally thought it was never going to happen because of outcry from the small business owners all along that Western Avenue corridor. It is choked on a regular rush hour. Of course, that's the biggest reason why the bus lane is important. But the amount of business that takes place along this Western Avenue corridor is significant. And it seems, I mean, I'm going to be asking around the Lynn City government people that I know personally. I'm hoping that, and I think that the message successfully got out to the small business owners that there's actually plenty of parking on the side streets, which was what the whole, if I remember correctly, I think Emily might be able to confirm this, that the study about the Western Avenue corridor in Lynn said, yes, you can just find parking off on the side streets and there's plenty of it. You just have to walk maybe 2 or 3 minutes longer and everybody benefits. And a little extra walking can do people good, and the bus lane does a lot of good. So I'll leave it there. I'm just thrilled beyond belief that it's going to happen. And I'm kind of burying the lead that it's Boston, Somerville, Malden, Brookline, Revere, and Lynn.
Oh, Lynn's great.
Just well.
I mean, Tom McGee is just phenomenal. I won't say he's the best thing that's happened to Lynn because I don't know Lynn's history, but he's a very good thing that's happened to Lynn. And the fact that he was on the Joint Committee on Transportation, he knows a lot about transportation. He just strikes me as a bold person, and who knows his way around the system, is willing to his integrity, and he's willing to do the right thing. And I don't know to what extent he's concerned about being reelected, but
he's not running.
He's not
Yeah.
running. All right.
Yeah, it was a big shock. He announced, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Wig, maybe about a month or two ago.
Yep.
I think it was like just at the beginning of end of spring, beginning of summer. Yeah, McGee's not going to run for a second term.
Do you know why he isn't?
No, I have not heard.
Yeah.
Wig? Heard anything about why?
I don't know, but I have the same attitude that you two do. I don't know him that well, certainly not at all personally, but I think he went about his job in a very workmanlike way.
Right.
And I think his announcement was timed just to allow other people to get in the race. I don't think there was anything selfish about it.
Right. But one other thing I just want to say about the busway is that I think there have been studies that have demonstrated that if you get people in, you get more people in by bus. When you make it easier for buses to travel than you do by parking. And so the businesses are probably going to find that they're going to do better because more people can get there. And so you actually lose the parking spaces. The people who are parking can find alternatives. But even if they were to go away completely, you're going to bring in more people by bus. And so they'll make up for what they've lost. And then some with the parking. So that's it. I'll stop. Then I'll have one thing to say about the running again, perhaps, if you want.
Yep. Oh, one last thing I'll mention about the Lynn Western Avenue bus lanes. I'm going to be hopeful and optimistic that enforcement will be robust. But so far, the enforcement that I've seen by the City of Lynn parking department for the Northern Strand bike lane that went in on Market Street, basically from City Hall to the water, is now a bus lane. The enforcement of the no parking on one side, which was necessary to make for the bus lane, plus a little bit of a protection. It's not, there's no physical barrier, but it's a little bit of a space for some protection. I have not seen a single day where there hasn't been at least one car parked in that bike lane.
That's too bad.
And today there were, I think, I stopped counting after about 10 cars parked all along in the bike lane where there's very clear no parking anytime bike lane. So I'm going to be talking to my city councilor about that. If the enforcement of the Western Avenue bus express lanes are done as badly, we're going to have some problems. But I'll leave it there. I don't mean to cast aspersions. I'm just saying that what I've seen is not good, and I'll be following it.
Well, that's good. Even without me asking about how it's going to work with the bus lanes, I think you should just push me for enforcement of the bike lanes. Just me to spend like a week just making examples out of people, because it's not good for the bikers or the cyclists. And so I think sometimes the cyclists need non-cyclists advocating for them, because a lot of times it's the same cyclists who are pushing for it, and people have a way of dismissing the voices that they've heard all the time. But you come out and say, I'm not a cyclist, but I care about this. This is a big deal, and you need to get someone out there to enforce it, because we don't want someone getting hurt or dying because they have to swerve out in traffic because someone is parked in the biking lane. It'll go a long way. And so I contradict myself a little bit and say they do listen. They do listen, but sometimes, as I said, the same voices make it a little harder to hear what they're saying. So if you're a different voice on that topic, it'll help.
Okay. Barry has hung up from the phone call. I was going to ask him in a little while if he wanted to say something. I didn't get the chance to jump in. I don't see any current viewers on YouTube, and there's no additional chat comments. So I will, I mean, unless I'm forgetting something, I'll make a motion to adjourn early.
Yes,
And-
let's, by all means, let's do it.
That's a second to the motion?
Yes.
Okay. Emily, unless anything that I'm forgetting from your side, or wait, Len,
Yeah, well,
Well,
maybe,
we'll call it a night. Go ahead.
I have one tiny footnote to Len's comments about materials, and I don't know
Please.
if there's anything that could be done about it or not, but there are some people in the Boston area that are very good on materials price strategies. One of them is Jeremy Grantham, who I think is a billionaire, but he's always supported all the sustainable conferences at MIT. And the other group that might be helpful is General Electric. You know, their headquarters is Fort Point Channel. They seem to be going back toward a manufacturing company. And with offshore wind and the other things that they're in, including the jet engines, both they and Jeremy Grantham should know a lot about hedging materials prices that are important for construction or making things. Now, and what I'm thinking of is, Len, I'm sure you've watched a lot of meetings at FMCB where they hedged interest rates basically on the projects. And commodities are similar. Now, it may be too complicated and it may not be worth doing, but it also may be worth asking somebody at MIT or Jeremy Grantham or GE if they thought that the state could hedge concrete and steel and, just the other key materials in transportation infrastructure, which is the biggest infrastructure in the state and in every state. So that's just a thought. It's just a footnote to what you were talking about, Len.
okay. All right, thanks. Let's keep in mind.
Yeah, thanks, Wig. I just noticed that Barry had disconnected, but he's back on. So Barry, I'm going to actually hit ask to unmute and allow you to say anything if you wanted as part of like public comment. I don't remember how to do it on the phone. It's something like *7 or *9, but I'm hitting the ask to unmute, which is supposed to prompt you. I just want, oh, there you go.
Hello, Barry.
You are on the air, Barry. Yay.
Good.
Nice to hear your voice.
I'm sorry I missed much of the presentation, but did anyone talk about the status of signal replacement on the red line and the orange line?
No, I don't think signal replacement on the red line, orange line was mentioned by Joe Cheever. No. Is there a particular concern that you have, or is there a particular need that's not being met for the signalization or these signals?
Well, there's a continuing, at least I assume so, effort to replace the signal system on at least the red line in connection with new equipment, new rolling stock that's coming in, and on the orange line. But I haven't seen anything in print about actually anything happening.
Okay. Well, we'll look into that, and I'll see what I can find out.
Thank you.
Yeah, sure thing. I mean, I know, I remember from back before the pandemic, I remember hearing about the project on the red line. It was impacting my trip.
What had happened was, as you are well aware, we had the meltdown on the red line.
Exactly.
But so they got it patched up. But that is not a solution because it's just patched up, because they're going to replace replace the entire signal system.
Yeah,
We
I-
haven't heard anything about that. That's project number. That's the orange line and the red line. Now, I don't know if it's Mr. Cheever's purview or not, but we haven't heard anything more about the replacement of the fare system.
I don't believe that's under Joe Cheever. I believe that's a separate department. I don't know which department off the top of my head.
That's what I assume. That's why.
Yep.
That's why I didn't ask that first. But in terms of operationally, the problem with the signal system, old system, and they continue to patch it together.
Yeah, I know that red line signal system upgrades had started back. I thought it was in 2018, but I don't know if that was a smaller scope project than what you're mentioning. But yeah, thanks for bringing that up, Barry. You're right. We haven't heard about that in a while. I agree.
Because it's a very serious thing, and it's not something that you can just take care of by replacing a couple hundred feet of signals here and there when they break down.
Right. Yes, and I know that as well the green line signal system. I don't know if it's still this way, but as of a year or two ago, was still operating on relays from the early 20th century, like over 100-year-old electronic components that couldn't be replaced. They had to be repaired. And there was one guy in the signal shop who could do it. And that was only a couple of years ago that was the case. Yeah, this is worth checking up on. Thank you very much, Barry.
Okay, very good, sir.
All right. I'm glad I noticed that you called back, Barry. I'm glad we got to speak with you. Unless
what happened was my arm was tired. I changed hands and I dropped the connection, so I had to dial again.
No worries. I'm glad you called back.
Thank you.
All right. I think we'll wrap it up. Good night, everyone. Thank you again, Emily, for joining us. Thank you, Wig and Len. And thanks, Barry. So I'm going to stop the stream and stop the meeting. Have a good month of August, and we'll see you all in